It was 5 years ago when I played the first Uncharted. I was in my junior year of high school, and I'd bought a PS3 off of eBay with money I'd gotten from my very first job. I played Bioshock Infinite and The Last of Us on that machine. When I wasn't working, that PS3 was how I spent most of my nights after school, experiencing some of my favorite games of all time for the first time. And among them was Uncharted. I immediately fell in love with Nathan Drake and Sully and Elena while exploring this exotic island, all the odds against me, and then in Uncharted 2 I was amazed by the visual upgrades, the bigger, better set pieces, and Uncharted 3 looked so beautiful and played so wonderfully alongside its attempts to dig deeper into Nathan Drake's character. It was safe to say that Uncharted had become one of my favorite game series of all time, a wonderful, thrilling escape from reality. But there was another. Not that one. When I finally bought a PS4, it came bundled with the fourth and final entry into Nathan Drake's story. A story that had grown so dear to me. Uncharted 4, A Thief's End. I opened the box, I put the disc in the console, I played it for hours and hours, and I adored it. Every second was pure Uncharted bliss. It was fast and tight and gorgeous. It had the greatest amount of character depth the series had ever seen. It was as much a celebration of Uncharted as it was a natural evolution of everything Amy Hennig and Naughty Dog created back in Drake's fortune. And that's why today, we're going to be taking a look at what exactly made this game so special. What made it a beloved game for both fans and critics alike. What makes it one of my personal favorite games of all time. And if we're going to do that, we need to talk about the person behind it all. The person who set the direction for the story, the design, and everything that made Uncharted 4 what it is. Love him or hate him, there's no one else in the AAA game industry doing it quite like Neil Druckmann. Joining Naughty Dog in 2004 as a programming intern, Druckmann worked on both Jak 3 and Jak X Combat Racing before finding his way onto the design and writing team for Drake's Fortune, bumped up to co-lead designer and writer on Uncharted 2, and then finally got his big break working as creative director and lead writer on The Last of Us and its DLC, Left Behind. And while Uncharted 4 did start development under the series' usual creative director and lead writer Amy Hennig, she left the company about 2 years into development and was replaced by Druckmann, who proceeded to take certain foundational elements and create something entirely his own, doing something that very few other AAA games do: made the story the priority. We don't often think of video games as a narrative medium, as in, unlike movies, shows, or books, we don't really understand the general purpose of video games as being to tell a compelling or substantial story. All you have to do is look at how the Game Awards separate narrative into its own category. You wouldn't see that at the Oscars because telling a story is, most of the time, kind of the point there. But with games, it becomes a touch more complicated because many games have zero interest in telling stories. Maybe they have fun characters or interesting worlds or cool lore, but the main narrative they're trying to tell is fairly basic and insubstantial, or is even treated more like just a really long side quest. And that's fine. I'm certainly not trying to say that it's a lesser form of art or has any less validity, but these kinds of games haven't really progressed the idea of video game narrative far beyond the very beginnings of the idea. Narrative in video games started mostly as just a way to contextualize more complicated mechanics and ideas. You didn't need a story for Pong because it's pretty self-explanatory, but there was a lot more going on in Super Mario Bros., to the point where you needed something to explain what you were actually trying to achieve. This wasn't just win the game, players needed a bit more than that. Video game narratives started as nothing more than context for your in-game actions, motivation to do what you were doing, usually saving a princess or stopping some vague evil from destroying the world. But as time went on and mechanics and gameplay became even more complex, stories had to get more complex as well, and by the Super Nintendo era, some games were actually trying to tell meaningful stories on their own as opposed to just using them as tools for gameplay. Initially relegated to RPGs like Final Fantasy VI or Chrono Trigger, this idea slowly expanded over the years to include other genres like action games, first-person shooters, platformers, and even puzzle games like Portal. But this created an interesting conflict, especially as we entered the 7th generation of consoles and onwards. How much priority should a story take over fun gameplay? We'd seen games like Shadow of the Colossus sacrifice some level of player enjoyment for the sake of narrative, but those were mostly isolated incidents. At the end of the day, the idea of a game being fun and enjoyable for the player was the priority for most big-budget studios. Narrative was either supposed to facilitate that ultimate goal or get out of the fucking way, and this was, in my personal opinion, to the detriment of many video game stories. Games can still tell a great story while not prioritizing it, but it becomes much more difficult and often results in a story that would have probably functioned better in a different medium. And Uncharted is no stranger to this conversation. That's storytelling 101, but we also realized then and there that's game design too. So to tether those story beats to the gameplay in a more meaningful way was the foundation that got this team of 4 people to really look at Uncharted 2 as a holistic experience. The original 3 Uncharted games are absolute classics that I love, especially Uncharted 2, and it was Naughty Dog's understanding of the relationship between gameplay and narrative that made Uncharted's stories stand out in an era where many franchises were trying to tell complex narratives with mixed results. However, I find it hard to describe the original trilogy of games as prioritizing narrative. Amy Hennig certainly understands herself to be a storyteller first and foremost, if interviews are any indication. It's why she focuses almost exclusively on single-player games, but as far as I can tell, she also seems to fully believe in the notion that a story must work within the confines of traditional design. And while you can occasionally break from it to do something like the desert chapter in Uncharted 3, player enjoyment is still your #1 priority. In every game, story and gameplay have to be interacting in some way on some level, but there's always one that leads. And for Uncharted, that was always gameplay, and the story struggled to keep up as a result. But Neil Druckmann has a different understanding of things.
So what do you think people don't understand or appreciate about storytelling in games?
Just how difficult it can be to have a vision for a story and to say, okay, this story is trying to say this very specific kind of message. And then to make sure you constantly come back to that and don't take shortcuts. And when you hit a wall, sometimes it's so easy to say, it's just a game. You can just hide it and we'll just have some explosion and get away with it. To say, no. This moment is really important and let's make it work.
Neil Druckmann is most passionate about 2 things: video games and storytelling. And what his priority is, above all else, is utilizing the medium's unique narrative strengths to tell an effective, emotional, and honest story, regardless of what that means for any notion of fun a player might have. Fun is such an interesting word. We took it off our focus tests. It was just a weird word that people were getting hung up on. I mean, how do you rate the dive sequence in Uncharted 4? Is that fun? But that level is important to set up how mundane Nate's life is. Just rating it on its own, 1 through 5, that was constantly the lowest rated level. But it kind of had to be. We're not going to change that. Story and character-centric gameplay is often much slower and more limiting to player choice. In other words, it doesn't fit the somewhat limited definition of fun most players might have. But instead, it takes the medium's interactive nature and utilizes it in much more interesting and effective ways. Take, for example, Chapter 4, A Normal Life. You spend all this time in Nate's attic finding trinkets and souvenirs from past adventures. All the nostalgia of the past games comes rushing back into the player the way it rushes back into Nate, shooting darts at targets like you're back in the action, outnumbered all the odds against you, looking at the old stuff from the abandoned attempt to find Henry Avery's lost treasure and watching Nate choose not to open up that old wound in spite of the player's curiosity. That's not a sequence you'd see in many other AAA games. Hell, that's not a sequence we've ever seen in an Uncharted game. I think Amy Hennig is a great character writer, and alongside her co-writers did some incredible narrative work on the first 3 games, but she would never have done this. Very few other AAA developers in general would have done this. Would have been so willing to put that much focus on character and creating a sense of emotional identification in the player by putting them through the same mundanities that are plaguing Nate. And that's where the difference lies when it comes to what a game prioritizes. To prioritize story, you don't necessarily have to sacrifice player enjoyment, but I do think you have to be willing to. And I think more than anyone else in the AAA industry right now, whether you like it or not, Neil Druckmann is willing to. Because his passion is in telling stories. That's what he cares about most, and that's what he wants to share with the world. And what kind of stories does Druckmann want to tell?
Oh, right, it was Corey from the God of War team. I just met him over the PlayStation Expo, and then his quote was, "Simple stories, complex characters." And yes, that's how it should be. I hate games that have all this extra exposition that's unnecessary, and I love exploring complex relationships. That's always what I strive for.
Druckmann's stories are all about the characters, who they are, what they want, and why they care. Look at The Last of Us, a game that's plot is literally just two people going across the United States to stop a disease that's crippled humanity. That's it. Few twists, little exposition, just two complicated people with complicated pasts learning to care about each other. And it's fucking amazing, and Uncharted 4 does exactly that. Uncharted 4's story is effectively just buried pirate treasure. And sure, it gives it that Uncharted flair by steeping it in actual historical piracy and the notorious pirate Henry Avery, but that's all pretty simple and easy to wrap your head around. It allows the game to spend as little time as possible on the history lessons and as much time as possible on the characters at the center. A brother once thought dead, a sociopathic narcissist with too much money to spend, a journalist in love with a thief, and a thief who swore to leave his life of danger and adventure behind. At the beginning of Uncharted 4, Nathan Drake isn't on some adventure. All he's searching for now isn't treasure or lost cities, it's cargo that fell to the bottom of a river. He's given up that life of adventure to spend his life with Elena Fisher, the woman who's been there by his side since Drake's fortune. But there's something nagging at him. He longs for the days of adventure and danger that he once had with Sully or his brother. He wants to get back into the game, but he refuses to. He won't even take the Malaysia job that would bring him pretty close to that life again without all the danger, and that Elena even pushes him to take just because of those pesky permits no one can seem to get a hold of. He's dedicated to this pursuit of a normal life because he's convinced himself that it's the only way to be happy with the woman he loves. But even though the two of them obviously enjoy each other's company, there is a sense of discomfort in their interactions, an unspoken fear between them, a question that scares them.
Hey, are you happy?
But that's not what people know Nathan Drake for. And Uncharted 4 soon gives us the Nathan Drake we've always known. His brother, Sam Drake, returns after having been thought dead for years, looking to go after Henry Avery's lost treasure, knowing it's the only way to pay off his debt to drug kingpin Hector Alcazar after he broke Sam out of prison. Nate tells Elena he's taken the Malaysia job because obviously getting her involved would mean endangering her, and they start on their adventure. And now we're getting to see the Nathan Drake we've known from the start. Drake's fortune had a whole heap of influences behind it, from movies and games alike. Indiana Jones and Tomb Raider and Prince of Persia and Gears of War. It's safe to say that Uncharted wasn't really trying to reinvent the wheel here, but what set it apart, what gave Uncharted its identity, was its characters. And of them, it was Nathan Drake that people loved the most, an instantly iconic leading man played wonderfully by Nolan North. And while the first three games certainly didn't make story the priority, they did a lot in the way of making Nate a pretty full-fledged and likable hero. Across the first three games, there are three tenets of Nathan Drake's character that are clearly established. Number one, he's a huge history dork and an even bigger underdog. You know, he needs to be kind of flawed and vulnerable, and we always talked about how you need to be able to flinch from the bullets coming by, you needed to stumble when he's running around and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, you're not going to put him in a costume. He needs to be in a t-shirt and jeans. One of the things that many of the most iconic action heroes have in common, from Indiana Jones to John McClane to even Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, is their physical vulnerability. The fact that they can get hit and bleed. The fact that it's not always certain they'll come out on top, because while they might be skilled or even have superpowers, they're still human. It makes us feel like we could do the things these people do. And Nathan Drake follows in that tradition. He wears a t-shirt and jeans. He's constantly having to break the tension with a joke. Things rarely, if ever, go perfectly for him. His adventures are always a scramble to make up for whatever goes wrong and hopefully not break his neck in the process. He's always outnumbered and outgunned, and all that keeps him alive are his wits and his dedication to not dying. He isn't some perfect being who can never lose. He loses a lot, actually. Frankly, it's amazing this man is still alive. But it's most fun to watch someone succeed when success isn't guaranteed. It's fun to watch someone just as vulnerable as the rest of us work around those vulnerabilities to still find a way ahead. But what adds to that humanity that feels kind of unique to Nate is his sincere passion for history and those people who make it. From the first levels of Drake's fortune, it's obvious that Nate does what he does because he loves doing it. The excitement he has in talking about Sir Francis Drake's journal is infectious. I've never gotten the feeling that Nate was ever in it just for the treasure. That was probably a nice bonus, but he was invested in this because it was inextricably linked to the thing he's most passionate about. And so, not only does his physical vulnerability make him feel human, so too does his passion and excitement. The fact that there's something that he loves to do and talk about aside from just being a hero. He's a person first. Then there's number 2, he won't leave anyone behind. One of my favorite parts of Uncharted 2 is Chapter 11, Keep Moving. After Jeff the cameraman is seriously wounded, Nate doesn't give up on him. He picks him up and he keeps moving, even though it puts him and everyone else at a stark disadvantage against Lazarevich's army. He won't leave behind this innocent man he literally just met, because that's just not who Nathan Drake is. In spite of his profession as a thief, Nate has a very present sense of morality. He refuses to even just bring a gun to the museum heist at the beginning of the game, and it's that resistance to leaving people behind that often gets him into the worst situations possible. I mean, that's what Uncharted 2's story is all about, to the point where its 2 female leads are symbolic of Nate's identity. Elena is his morality, his refusal to let anyone get hurt who doesn't have to, even if it means possibly getting hurt himself, and Chloe is the pressure to let all that go. Live life only for yourself and do only what helps you succeed. But at every turn, Nate chooses his morals. Even when he comes to a point of wanting to give up the search for the Chintamani stone entirely, he keeps going because he can't just let Lazarevich gain the power he needs to basically take over the world. Nate cares about people. On Nathan Drake's watch, no one gets left behind. And number 3, dude's got commitment issues. Nate's not someone who's willing to commit to anything without a defined endpoint. If there's no treasure to find, no definite goal to work towards and achieve, Nate gets scared and runs away. In Uncharted 3, Nate shows himself to be someone who can only commit to one thing: finding fortune. People, not so much, even when they want to commit themselves to him. He runs away from Elena because he's scared of something that he can't control, scared of letting go of this life he's always lived. And you know what? Why would he want to? Why would anyone want to do that? Treasure hunting might be dangerous, but at least it makes sense. At least he's used to it. I mean, what is the point, really, of changing when you're happy, just doing what you're doing right now? And how couldn't you be? Uncharted was made with this desire to create an interactive action movie, big set pieces, death-defying stunts, and within this interactive medium, you, as the player, get to be a part of all that. You get to feel the thrill of all the odds stacked against you, the excitement of finding fabled treasures and lost cities all alongside Nathan Drake himself, the legendary Nathan Drake. You know what? You don't need to know all that other stuff. Fuck that other stuff. It doesn't matter. What matters is that Uncharted 4 took that conception of putting you right in the middle of a blockbuster adventure film and for the first time in the series, made it a total reality. While Uncharted did get very close to fulfilling that initial promise in its first 3 games, I don't think it was fully realized until 4. I've already mentioned it, but the buried pirate treasure story is in itself the quintessential adventure narrative. Going all the way back to Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island in 1883, and even before that in 1824 with Washington Irving's Wolfer Weber, buried pirate treasure has long been a staple of the adventure genre. It is one of, if not the most easily identifiable adventure trope of all time, and making it the premise of Uncharted 4 only solidifies the game as being the quintessential adventure story. Only this time, it's interactive. You get to play through it. And then there's Rafe Adler, otherwise known as my favorite Uncharted villain because he's exactly the kind of villain Uncharted has always needed. He's this perfect blend of megalomaniacal and vulnerable, an uncomfortably human villain with unlimited resources and a totally unlovable personality. He's as fun to hate as he is extremely threatening. He stabs a guy to death because he couldn't handle getting only $100 million and he's already rich. When you compare Rafe to Lazarevich and whoever the villains were in the other 2 games, you realize that those other villains are almost cartoons by comparison. They're evil because they're evil. They play into the tropes they need to play into, and they work just fine. But Rafe is scary. Rafe is manipulative and unstable and unpredictable. I always knew that eventually Nate and the gang would defeat Lazarevich and the rest, but this guy is just smart enough to be the one who bests him. And that makes his eventual defeat all the sweeter. Getting to take a villain so instantly unlikable and allowing you, the player, to be the one to bring him down in the end. But the story is only half the equation here. After all, this is supposed to be an interactive action-adventure film, so how does the interactivity part stack up? Well, for one thing, the controls in this game are tighter than Uncharted's controls have ever been. Uncharted 4 is the end result of years worth of tweaking to find the perfect balance of weight and speed to minimize frustration, but retain a sense of reality in your movements and traversal. And those pitch-perfect controls are complemented nicely by an evolved environmental design and combat encounters. Most third-person shooters like this are built on straight lines. The Gears of War games, which I mentioned previously as an influence on Uncharted, are a good example of this. You're either on one line parallel to your enemies on another line, only allowed to move forward after you take all of them out, or you're moving forward perpetually on a singular narrow path, taking out enemies along the way. And Uncharted was very similar to this a lot of the time. It was just having a little more fun with it. Not only was one of the main purposes of Uncharted's design to create a sense of constant movement and make sure the player wasn't allowed to stay in one place for too long, the way it utilized this straight line design was always a bit more interesting. Take, for example, the encounter with the tank in Uncharted 2. You're having to move across diagonal lines through the village to find more cover and RPG ammo to take the tank out. It gives this illusion of a 360-degree playing field as you constantly run all across this environment, but it's actually very subtly leading you through it in a linear fashion to the next big moment with maybe just the slightest possible variations, like which place you go to for RPG ammo next. But Uncharted 4's combat environments, by and large, are built not on straight lines, but on circles. These environments are fully three-dimensional, as in you can move around them in any way you need to, and you have to be moving at all times. It puts all the control in your hands. There are still a lot of set pieces that lead you to very specific spots and keep you on a straight line path, but those are so fast-paced you'd hardly even notice. But with normal combat encounters, you, the player, are the hero who's making every decision as you take on an enemy that vastly outnumbers you. There is always a decision to be made. Do I go in silently or do I go in loud? Do I flank them to the left or to the right? Do I go up, down, or keep moving forward? Do I take the long way around or do I use my grappling hook? Oh yeah, the grappling hook! How could I forget? The grappling hook in Uncharted 4 is the perfect kind of gameplay innovation in a long-running series. A simple addition that builds on what's already there. The hook doesn't break the mechanics that already existed, it expands on them. The grappling hook adds a whole new dimension to Uncharted's gameplay. It is one of the biggest enablers of combat environments' three-dimensionality, making it to where there are no dead ends you can be chased into, only opportunities. And then in traversal, it makes for much faster, more reaction-based platforming. You're having to keep your eyes open for when the floor gives out, and you have to use your grappling hook to escape falling to your death. But the grappling hook isn't the only new mechanic. You have the climbing pick in the second half of the game that adds another reaction-based mechanic for traversal. Vehicle sections are back from Drake's Fortune, but instead of feeling like really out-of-place minigames or on-rail shooters, they're used to provide much more open levels to explore, making you feel like you're really searching for what you're looking for, as opposed to just following a straight path to your destination. Or, like the grappling hook, it can be an addition to the pre-existing mechanics that adds a whole other method of problem solving that we've never seen in the series before. Or they're used in high-octane chase sequences that feel like they were ripped straight from the latest and greatest action blockbuster. And that segues me quite nicely into the true point where Uncharted's premise was, indeed, fully realized. The King's Bay chase. This set piece might be not only the best in all of Uncharted, but one of the best action set pieces ever produced in any medium. It starts with an immediate setup of the stakes. Rafe's been tracking Nate and the others' phones and now has a beat on Sam, who's all the way across town. Nate and Sully now have to make their way to him and escape before Sam is either captured or killed. From there, it moves into the market shootout, which seems simple until a big-ass truck crashes through a wall and starts shooting at you. You make your way around, trying to keep out of line of sight, pushing through enemies, up the stairs, across the roof, and into the car. And now you're driving as fast as you can downhill and through alleyways and even on rooftops as the truck chases you through the streets. You have to make quick decisions as to which way to go next, get out of the way when the truck blocks your path or comes up behind you, all while still trying to find your way to Sam. And there he is, on a motorcycle, being chased by a convoy. I have to get to him. I drive through the mud and the dirt under bridges trying to catch up, but I'm running out of road. I notice that one of the trucks chasing Sam has something I can hook onto, so I throw my grappling hook, latch on, and now I'm flying through the air, dodging these big wooden structures and boats passing underneath. Barely a plan in my mind, being pulled through the water, trying to hold on, and now I'm being pulled through the mud. I shoot off enemies while I'm climbing up the rope to the truck. I get on, I'm fighting off all these soldiers outnumbered, I don't know, 1,000 to one, I think. I jump to another car, and now I'm driving again, pushing other cars off the road. I'm almost to Sam. I have to grapple onto another truck because the one I'm driving is about to explode. I pull myself up, shoot off more bad guys, jump to another car. I'm driving again. Holy shit, Sam's right there, and then boom, it's that truck again. It crashes into me. I go rolling, the car's on fire, but I'm still alive. I drag myself to the door. I shoot the bad guys outside, and the truck's back, but Sam is too. He pulls me onto his bike, and the truck's chasing us down. It just won't give up. All I can do is shoot at it behind me, but it's pretty beat up now. We can do this. We just have to make it a little longer. Holy shit!
Holy shit. Yeah.
That was awesome! Uncharted has had so many amazing set pieces and action sequences, fighting across the cars of a moving train in the Himalayas, trying to make it off a sinking ship just off the coast of Yemen, hanging off of an exploding plane above the Rub al Khali desert. But this simple, no-frills chase scene takes the cake. Multi-layered, constantly changing, taking advantage of every last mechanic the game has, constantly moving and escalating, never letting you get too comfortable in one spot, danger following you everywhere it can. It's just pure tension and adrenaline, so confident in itself that it doesn't need to give you any big spectacle aside from the vulnerability of yourself combined with full control over everything you do. It's thrilling and exhilarating and just plain fun. It is everything Uncharted action has always wanted to be. It is Uncharted fully realized. And now we're in the clear. Everyone got out mostly intact. We figured out where we need to go next. We're ahead of Wraith, and come to find out that we're not only finding treasure, but another lost city known as Libertalia, a pirate sanctuary for all those who want to be free to live as they choose, and a lot more money than we were expecting. This is amazing. Absolutely nothing can stop us, and
How's the Malaysia job going, Nate? Seems like you're a hair off course.
Elaine, it's not what it looks like.
Really? Because what it looks like is that you're searching for Henry Avery's buried treasure. And given the shoreline soldiers that are all over town, I'd bet you're not the only ones looking for it.
All right, well, I guess it's kind of what it looks like. But I can explain. Look, it's gonna sound crazy.
Try me.
Well, for starters, this is Sam. Sam Drake. My brother. Bye.
I'm sorry.
I thought he had died in a Panamanian jail, but I was obviously very wrong. He's been stuck in there for 15 years, and it's because of me. And the guy who broke him out wants a lot of money, and the only way we can pay off the debt is Avery's treasure. But that's the good news. We found it. It's on an island just off the coast.
Okay, just stop. Was there ever a Malaysia job?
Okay. Come on, wait. Elena, wait!
I don't get you.
Look, I wanted to tell you.
You know what? Enough.
No, I wanted to, but how could I?
I don't know. Just say it.
I had to protect you.
That is bullshit, Nate. You just didn't have the nerve to face me again.
I knew you would react like this.
How would you react? You lied to me for weeks. If you were killed, I wouldn't have even known about it. And now you have a brother. Who are you?
Come on. I'm me. Come on, it's me. It's different this time.
Oh my God.
I have to save him. I don't even care about the treasure.
The look on your face when you walked into this room. If you're done lying to me, then you should stop lying to yourself. I got a plane to catch. You do what you have to do.
Hey, what are you doing? Go after her.
We're not done here.
Well, maybe we should be.
What are you saying?
I'm saying maybe there's a smarter way to save Sam.
Such as?
Such as we give him a new identity. We put him in hiding somewhere.
He's been in prison for 15 years. He's not going into hiding.
Okay, fine. You go after your wife. Sam and I will head off for Libertalia.
Without me? Come on, you'll get both of you killed.
Really? Kid, I've been doing this for a hell of a long time. I think I might be able to
Hey, you
handle...
want to be helpful, Sullivan? Go keep an eye on her.
Whatever you say.
You need a hand?
I got it. Let's go pack your bags.
To place this scene here is something deliberate. Immediately following the thrill and beauty and freedom of Uncharted fully realized, we're stuck in this hotel room with her, Elena. The woman who's always been there by Nate's side since Drake's fortune. And we're forced to sit there and watch with no power and no control and just listen to Elena's hurt in this moment as everything she thought she knew about her own husband is thrown into question. If he never told her about Sam, his brother, what else has he never told her about? How many more secrets has he been keeping? Is the Malaysia job even real, or was he lying about that too? When she asks him, "Who are you?" it's because she isn't sure she ever actually knew in the first place. All the hurt in her expression, the pain she feels present in every word, every movement, the way she fiddles with her ring, wondering if she was stupid for thinking this man who kept running away was ever going to change. This is someone she truly, deeply cares about and loves, lying to her for his own ends because he was afraid she would tell him. No. If you were killed, I wouldn't have even known about it. It doesn't get more real than that. There's a fear in that line for someone that matters to her, for someone she loves, but there's also an anger for that same someone who didn't even bother to consider the possibility. All those times he almost died, all those times I could have missed a jump or gotten shot. How many times could I have died just in the King's Bay chase alone and she wouldn't have even known about it? It's so easy to run away into worlds and stories where we can feel all the thrill and none of the danger, where we can watch people find love and joy and fortune and become legends, where we can think to ourselves, one day, that can be me too. It's a lot easier than facing the reality. But oftentimes when we're escaping, we forget the people outside of that escape. We don't realize just how much we could be hurting them, or sometimes more accurately, we don't care. Not enough to accept what we've done wrong. Elena has done so much for Nate, has come back for him so many times, has always constantly refused to leave him behind. And now he's here running the gambit of excuses and scapegoats to soften the fact that he lied to her with no regard for how it could really affect her. How could I tell you? I had to protect you. I knew you'd react like this. Everything to get away from the simple truth right in front of his face. He wants to be here. He was just waiting for an undeniable opportunity. Caught up in the adventure, running away from all those questions he doesn't want to answer. And who gave him the perfect excuse, the perfect escape? But his brother, Sam Drake. Samuel Drake is the biggest risk Uncharted 4 took. A long-lost brother is a trope usually reserved for soap operas that have no clue where to go next, and so introduce a character never seen, mentioned, or even alluded to before to create more potential drama. But from the opening missions of the game, Sam Drake proves not only why he's never come up before, but also why he needs to be here in this particular story.
Sam, no. No, you hold on! Hold on! Sam! Give me your other arm! Come on, reach! No! Sam!
Nate is forced to abandon his brother. The man who would never leave anyone behind is given no choice but to leave behind the person who means everything to him. Not only does it explain why Nate wouldn't want to even mention he had a brother, but it also gives Nate even greater reason to help Sam when he returns. He can't abandon his brother again. I don't think Nate would have gone after this treasure without Sam's situation. After all, he wouldn't even take the Malaysia job Elena was pressuring him to take. Nate agrees to help Sam because Sam convinces him that Nathan Drake is the only one who can help him.
I don't trust Charlie or anybody else that you've got on that phone with my life, okay? I need you on this one.
If Nate doesn't go, Sam dies. And if Sam dies, it'll be Nate's fault. This is the opportunity to go back and fix one of his greatest mistakes. But it's also the perfect excuse. It's exactly the kind of undeniable reason to get back out there. The perfect escape from all the questions he doesn't want to answer. He gets to have his brother back, relive the days before everything else when it was just him and Sam living this life together, chasing their fortune. Two brothers who only ever had each other, living a life where all they need is each other. But then, reality hits. Nate has to realize that he can't have it both ways. He can't have both the life he left behind and the woman he left it behind for. Whatever he chooses, he has to give up the other. It's either what he loves or who he loves. And he chooses. He chooses by not going after Elena. He chooses to run away again. And that's when we get chapter 12, At Sea. A long, slow-paced exploratory chapter where Nate and Sam go from island to island searching for the treasure, and their dialogue here is much more stilted than before. Their interactions feel forced, their relationship is strained. Nate is being forced to wonder if Sam really has his best interests in mind. As regret slips into the fantasy they've crafted, Nate has to consider that maybe he made the wrong choice. But Sam is also frustrated with Nate for completely different reasons. Sam wishes that he would just let all of that stuff go. Forget about Elena. Forget about a normal life. Stop being so distracted. We have each other again, don't we? We're searching for Henry Avery's treasure, aren't we? The treasure that was supposed to be ours? Why are you so distracted when this is all we've ever wanted? He doesn't even fully believe that Nate's internal conflict is genuine, that it's not just performative for Elena. He doesn't understand what Nate is sacrificing because for Sam, it's always been the two of them. That's all that's ever mattered. Everything else is just context for the relationship between them. Sam couldn't move on, but Nate did.
Can we at least acknowledge the chance that maybe Avery's idea for secret pirate utopia didn't pan out? And maybe we're just swept up in this fantasy, when instead we should be looking for a real way to save you.
Sam is enamored of this fantasy, this idea of finding buried pirate treasure with his little brother like two kids playing in the backyard. For Sam, this is the adventure of a lifetime. Who needs anything else? Who needs people who are just going to hold you back? Sam admires the pirates. He admires Avery. He looks to them as freedom fighters who sought only their own liberty and fortune from an oppressive government who never actually cared about them. Libertalia, the pirate utopia, is the natural endpoint for that pursuit, a place where people could go to be free to make their own choices. No one had to rely on anyone else. No one gave that to them. They found it themselves. They weren't beholden to anyone. They were free. That's fortune for Sam. Freedom. But freedom is a double-edged sword, especially when it's given to you by someone like Hector Alcazar. Sam loves freedom, wants it more than anything, but the price might be his life. That's the entire reason Nate came. It's the reason he lied to Elena, because he had to save Sam's life. So when he and Sam are on a cliff at gunpoint by Rafe and Nadine, Nate does what he does best. He talks. He tells them they can help find Avery's treasure if they get a small cut, just enough to buy Sam his freedom from Alcazar.
Whoa, what the hell are you talking about, Nate? Hector Alcazar died in a shootout in Argentina like 6 months ago. I'm the one that got Samuel out. Oh. Wow. What did he tell you? Sam, what kind of story did you cook up? Alcazar? Really? You lied? You lied to your baby brother?
We're wasting time.
Just a second. Thing is, Nate, I never stopped looking for Avery's treasure. I just kept running into these dead ends. And then I hear that our dear old Samuel Drake, an authority on Avery, is alive and somewhat well. There was no breakout. I bribed the prison warden, and your brother, he just waltzed right out the front gate. He spent the last 2 years tracking down a second St. Dismas cross. You know what? He did it all with me.
Oh,
Oh, yeah?
no, that's bullshit.
Oh. Sam, care to refute?
Nate,
Oh, Sam. Jesus, no.
listen. Avery's treasure was ours. It was always ours.
I left my life for you.
This is someone Nate truly, deeply cares about and loves, lying to him for his own ends because he was afraid Nate would tell him no. All Sam has ever wanted was to find this treasure with his brother, so he needed something that would pull Nate back into the fray. And just saying, hey, let's go after this treasure together now that you know I'm still alive, probably wouldn't have cut it. But what is he going to do? Just not chase after his dream? He can't do that. He's getting older. He doesn't have much time left before doing this will just be impossible. So fuck the consequences. Lie to him, because in the end, he'll appreciate him for it, won't he? This is what he wanted too, right? Isn't this what's going to make both of them happy? Sam is terrified that he may never get to be what he's always wanted to be. He's terrified that he will never get to do that something great he always believed he was supposed to do. That he will never be that someone he was supposed to be. The person his brother is. This legend who's found lost cities and heaps of treasure. The man who became everything Sam wanted to become. Sam has tied up all of his desires and his anxieties with the love he has for his brother, and in that has endangered the one remaining bond he still has. And now it's all going to shit. He may have ruined his brother's marriage. His brother is starting to resent him. It's not making him happy like he thought it would. It's not making Sam happy. It's not making me happy. So why in the hell are we doing any of this? We're just running around in these self-destructive circles trying to escape from what we're most afraid of, but we can't. It keeps catching up. Those questions about who we've been, who we are, who we're gonna be, who we can't be, who will never be. Nate was always told by his brother that this fortune would be theirs, that they deserved it, and all they had to do was seek it out. For Nate, this is it. If he can just find this treasure, then everything will work itself out. His brother will be satisfied, he will be satisfied, and everything will be all right again. But that's a lie. It's always been a lie. It was never about the treasure or the money. It was about them. It was about saving the brother Nate left behind, and no matter what else he has to throw away. It was about a chance to have his brother back, the only person he ever needed, and that person lied to him. In the end, Sam is captured, and Nate falls from the cliff and into the river below. There is no one there to save him. After all the lies, all the running away, all the seeking of fortune, everything has fallen apart, and no one is happy. But then, suddenly, someone comes to the rescue of Nathan Drake. The one he's been running away from. The one he lied to. The one who always comes back. Uncharted 4 seeks to answer a basic question the series had never sufficiently answered before. Why do Nate and Elena love each other? It's an idea that Uncharted has in large part been completely uninterested in. Elena herself was initially conceived just to fill in the adventure story trope of the somewhat badass, but not badass enough to overshadow the main character, female love interest who would inevitably become a damsel in distress at some point to create superficial tension. Emily Rose and some solid writing made her likable and gave her a personality, but she still didn't do much beyond fulfilling that trope. Let alone did the game give much reason for her and Nate falling in love other than because that's sort of what the trope demanded. And Uncharted 2 did take the character a little bit further in making her representative of Nate's morals, but shared morals does not a loving relationship make. And in Uncharted 3, well, frankly, I don't think they had any clue what to do with her by Uncharted 3. I mean, it's kind of amazing that Elena even stuck around after the first game. After all, a lot of action-adventure heroes from James Bond to Ethan Hunt, even to Nate's most direct inspiration, Indiana Jones, have had numerous partners over the years, sometimes even just straight up ignoring the ones from previous entries. So why not Nathan Drake himself? Uncharted 2 even kind of plays at it with the introduction of Chloe Fraser until suddenly, boom, it's Elena again! The fact of it is that it was always the intent for Elena to be the once and future love of Nathan Drake. The games just never took the time to ask why. But after Nate and Elena break up off screen for the vaguest of reasons, not once but twice, and then get back together at the end for equally, if not more vague reasons both times, you have to start asking why. Why do they keep coming back to each other? Why does Nate give up everything for her? Why do these two love each other? Well, that's what Uncharted 4 wants to know too. After Nate realizes he's been lied to the same way he lied to her, after everything falls apart, Sam is captured and Nate is injured, it's Elena who comes to his rescue. It's her that cleans his wounds and picks him back up. She saves him.
Thanks for saving me. Again.
I almost didn't this time.
And as they journey across the island in search of Sam, their relationship is front and center, and it's not looking great. Nate has done this one too many times now, and Elena's hurt. And why wouldn't she be? But even through all that, they still have banter. They make each other laugh. They're working together just as well as they always have. That love is still there. It's just sort of lost. And this journey to find Sam is the process of finding it. Two people working together to find each other again. And it's hard, and they don't always know what to say. Nate doesn't know what to say. But he's at a point where, after everything that's happened, after feeling what it is to be lied to in order to escape the truth, he's finally willing to look inward and face that truth. The real reason that he keeps running away.
I wasn't trying to protect you. It's just, I made a promise that I was done with this life.
We both did.
Yeah, but I broke it. I didn't tell you because I was afraid.
Afraid of what?
Of losing you. I guess I was, protecting myself. You know?
It's her. It's always been her. Everything Nate does in this game, every choice he makes, every lie that he tells, every action that he takes, everything is in reaction to his fear of losing her. Because she is the best thing that's ever happened to him. She has made him the happiest he has ever been. And Nathan Drake is a character terrified of being happy. Because if you're happy, that means you have something to lose. If you love someone, that means you could lose them. Or it means that they could leave you. Nathan Drake's mother killed herself because of an illness she couldn't control. His father surrendered him and Sam to the state shortly thereafter. He was told by the nuns taking care of him that he and his brother were a waste. And he always believed that Sam died because he refused to leave Nate behind. Nate knows what it is to be abandoned, and he knows what happens to the people who don't leave him. To the point where for him, being abandoned isn't a possibility, it's an inevitability. Eventually, no matter what, he will be left behind. And so instead of submitting to that, he just lives a life where it has no meaning. A life dominated by change and instability, and when you live a life like that, people come and go, things change so often that change becomes meaningless. But when you settle down, live a stable life, change becomes a threat. So Nate just keeps running back to that life. He leaves Elena before she can leave him. And it's not because he doesn't want that connection. I mean, the whole reason he's so passionate about history is because that's one of the only connections he has with his mom. Nate craves that connection, but he's become so accustomed to the idea that nobody will ever stay that he just doesn't bother. Except for with Elena. But the question remains, why? Why has Nathan gotten this far with her, even marrying her? And why hasn't Elena just let him go? There's a lot of reasons why they work together. They both share a love for history and the truth. They both have very similar morals and a general respect for human life, enough to refuse to kill anyone for any purpose except self-defense. Neither of them take themselves that seriously and are always ready with a joke or to play along with the other's joke. Elena reins in Nate's impulsivity with her aptitude for preparedness, while Nate's impulsivity is often a source of excitement and joy for Elena. But it's more than that. There's this scene after Nate and Elena have fought their way into New Devon, the place where the pirate captains who founded Libertalia lived in grand mansions separated from the rest of their people. They find the mansion of Thomas II, Henry Avery's right-hand man, and in the dining hall, they find the bodies of the captains, all except for Avery and II. And as Nate unravels the story behind the table of skeletons, the men who destroyed everything around them for this treasure, broke every meaningful bond they had, this happens.
These are some of history's greatest pirates, and they all perished in an instant at this very table.
It's incredible.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
The decision to focus in on Elena in this moment, to keep the shot on her, Nate out of focus even though he's the one talking, to focus on her expression, a mixture of lingering hurt and sincere love. She watches as he goes on about the thing he lied to her for, but knows full well that it was this passion that she fell in love with in the first place. She looks at him and sees that it was never really about the treasure or the adventure or the action or any of that. It was this that he missed, even if he didn't realize it. It was this that he left behind. For her. For better or worse. And Nate looks at her and sees her smile, sees her love in that moment. The love that he ran away from because he was scared. And he sees someone who would never leave him behind, for better or worse. Among the remains of people who trusted each other so little that they killed each other, unwilling to share their fortunes or their lives with anyone. Nathan Drake and Elena Fisher are here together, seeing the love that lost its way. Elena sees Nate, and she sees a passionate dork who loves history and the truth, who cares about people enough to put everything at risk, including himself, to save everyone he can. Someone who would never hurt her intentionally. And when Nate sees Elena, he sees someone with that same passion for truth, that same love for the adventure, and someone who is willing to devote herself to anything as long as she cares about it. Even him. Elena almost didn't come back this time. But she did. Nate and Elena are not perfect people, and their relationship isn't perfect either. It's been through a lot, weathered a lot of storms, but that love is still there. Sometimes love is just realizing who you'd never leave behind. Even though Nate keeps running away, Elena always finds him again. He keeps seeking greatness and fortune, but why do you need to be great or find some fortune when you can just love another person?
Anyone ever tell you you have a funny idea of romantic?
Yeah, I may have heard that somewhere before.
Good talk.
It was never the adventure or the treasure or the lost cities that made him happy. It was the passion he had and the person he got to share it with. But for some, that quest for greatness and fortune is all they have. Some have chosen not to share their lives. Some are too afraid. Even some from centuries ago. I am a man of fortune, and I must seek my fortune. The words of Henry Avery are what opened the game. This notion that fortune must be sought and earned, literally the basis of treasure hunting itself, to seek out fortune. But Henry Avery also imagined himself as being equivalent to Saint Dismas, the penitent thief.
During the crucifixion, Jesus is placed between two thieves, okay? One of them mocked Jesus. The other one, this guy, was penitent. Okay? He accepted his punishment with grace.
And Jesus brought him to paradise.
Despite all he'd done in his life, Dismas got into heaven anyway, finding fortune in paradise. Henry Avery's obsession with the idea of the penitent thief extended into his recruitment for Libertalia. The iconography of St. Dismas and the crucifixion of Christ are scattered throughout his little treasure hunt because Avery envisioned himself as the penitent thief, a man of fortune seeking his fortune, a good thief bound for paradise. And paradise was Libertalia, a place of fortune and freedom beyond all rules and regulation, a place where all people shared in their wealth and their prosperity, but over time, Avery couldn't help but fall into his old ways. Along with all the other founders of Libertalia, he stole away all the wealth contributed by the colonists and quashed any and all rebellion. And things only got worse from there. Avery fell into a total psychological decline. He partnered with his right-hand man, Thomas II, to poison all the other founders, making all the treasure of Libertalia the sole property of two men. Suddenly, after all the work that went into founding it, Libertalia was in shambles, because two pirates realized that their conceptions of freedom could never include sharing their fortune or their lives with anyone. And hundreds of years later, we have Rafe Adler. Rafe was a man who, while not as acquainted with St. Dismas, would certainly have believed himself to be equal to him. Rafe would find fortune despite it already being given to him by inheritance. He wanted to seek out his fortune, earn it, and he never intended on sharing it with anyone. He even killed that prison guard because he wouldn't share it 4 ways, and honestly, he probably had full intentions of doing the same to Nate and Sam once it was all done. Probably to Nadine, too. He wanted to make history, be known for something more than having rich parents and an inherited business. This is all about proving himself, finding the fortune he believes is his. And finally, there's Nathan Drake, a man who tried to leave everything behind, to settle down and live out the rest of his life in peace and quiet, but who found himself longing for the life he used to have, and found the perfect scapegoat to try and escape from everything he feared. Every possible hurt or pain he might experience, every question he didn't want to answer. And so, he ran away, threatening everything he held dear, everything that really mattered, to chase a fortune that he's always been told was his. And in a ship inside a mountain on an island off the coast of Kings Bay in Madagascar, these three are, for the first time, all in the same place.
It's Avery and two. They killed each other.
Two men who couldn't share their fortune. Every treasure has a price. And for them, it was more than just their lives. It was their bond, their friendship. These skeletons are the last remains of Libertalia, the last remains of paradise. Nate is only interested in saving his brother at this point, but Rafe can't let this treasure go. Because Nate has Sam and Elena and Sully, but Rafe has nothing but this fortune he has spent most of his life seeking. So he grabs a sword lodged into one of the captain's corpses and he attacks Nathan Drake, the legend, the one who found 3 ancient cities and piles of treasure while he was just trying to find one, the one who has accomplished so much more than he has ever accomplished in his entire life. There's a moment earlier in the game where Nadine accuses Rafe of thinking he needs Nate to find this treasure. He wanted to draw Nate out because he figured he could never find this treasure unless Nathan Drake, the legendary Nathan Drake, was also trying to find it. And now, in a burning ship about to go down, all he wants is to kill him. Because maybe that'll be proof enough that he was worth something, that he could earn something. If killing Nathan Drake is the only fortune he can have, then so be it. Nate dodges as best he can, but eventually he realizes he has no other choice but to take the other sword from the other body and fight back. Metal clashes together as the two battle, this senseless, pointless fight that will not earn either of them anything until finally Nate has Rafe up against a wall. But he won't kill Rafe in cold blood like that. That's not his style.
You got me. You know what, Nate? Underneath all the bravado, you're just a sad little boy with delusions of grandeur. Who, by the way, can't fence for shit. So long, Nathan Drake.
Your mother was the most brilliant historian I have ever met. We could have accomplished so much together. But then her illness... I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. Happened a long time ago.
Of all her discoveries, this would have been her crowning achievement. Sic Parvis Magna.
Greatness from small beginnings.
Sir Francis Drake's motto. Yeah, Latin and historical figures. Those were our dinner conversations. We were a weird family.
Did she ever tell you her theories regarding Sir Francis Drake and his heirs?
Sir Francis Drake didn't have any heirs.
Yeah.
That's what history tells us. But your mother and I believed otherwise. Learning that old pirate's secrets is just one more adventure I have to let go. I guess there's a lot I have to let go.
I graduated college last December. And I'm not where I wanted to be. I'm not who I wanted to be. I was supposed to be some famous novelist by now. I was supposed to be telling my own stories. I was supposed to be married, or at least in love. I was supposed to have something more than a mid-tier YouTube channel, thousands of dollars in student debt, no job prospects, and a question gnawing at the back of my brain that I don't want to answer. And the funny thing is that I feel like I've been asking that question for a long time. Even 5 years ago when I played Drake's Fortune, because I was a junior in high school who didn't really have any friends, who didn't really know how to talk to people, who didn't know anything about anything. So I bought an old PS3 off of eBay and I played video games. I played BioShock and The Last of Us and Uncharted to get away from all that, to escape into stories and experiences where those questions didn't exist. Questions I didn't want to answer because I was afraid that I'd say no. I played Uncharted 4 for the first time in my senior year of high school, right on the cusp of entering a new stage in my life where everything was supposed to be different. This was going to be my time to find my fortune. I was going to do everything I was supposed to do. I was going to finally finish that novel and find love and be successful, and I would have earned all of it myself. But I haven't done any of that. Instead, I watched everyone around me finding their fortune, and I was just there. Searching and finding nothing. And now I'm here, on the cusp of entering a new stage in my life again while I replay Uncharted 4, because I don't know what to do, or where to go, or who to be. I don't know if I'm ever going to be the person that I want to be. I don't know if I'm ever going to find my fortune. Evelyn was a renowned historian, a collector of historical artifacts and relics. a woman obsessed with her passion for the old and left behind. And through that passion, she found love in the form of her husband, Kenichiro Namba, and a son, Edmund. But she couldn't let go of what she loved, so she lost who she loved. She separated from her husband, and after failing to show up to his funeral, her son cut off all contact. And now she's just sitting alone in a mansion full of her own regrets. Her attempts to escape into her passions because she was afraid. And because of it, she lost everything that ever mattered. The ability to share your life with someone else. She spent so much time trying to run away that she forgot what was right in front of her the whole time. She dies alone. But not before she tells Nathan and Samuel Morgan about their mother's theory that Sir Francis Drake had heirs. And after escaping from police, Nate tells Sam that they can't go back to their old lives. No one would ever believe they had nothing to do with Evelyn's death, so Sam comes up with a solution.
Nathan, back at that mansion, you knew just as much about that stuff as that poor old lady. Here, I always felt that we were destined for something great. But until tonight, I didn't know what that meant. But this, Mom's unfinished work, this is our chance to restart our lives with brand new identities.
What are you talking about?
I know some guys. Pretty good at forging papers, too. Now, as for our new name, Mom believes that Sir Francis Drake had heirs. Who's to say he didn't?
You're serious, aren't you?
Nathan, we were meant for this. And I promise, you and me together, we're gonna go far. So what do you say? Nathan Drake?
The moment that Nathan Morgan became Nathan Drake. It was him and his brother together. They didn't need anyone else. They didn't want anyone else. But then Nate lost Sam, and suddenly he didn't know what to do. It was a new stage of his life, and he was afraid. So he ran away. Even when he had Elena, he ran away. He kept trying to find the fortune he and his brother had been searching for, that great destiny Sam said they were meant for, chasing after that like it was going to make him happy. But in the end, it was never the chase that mattered. It was never the fortune.
How long we been chasing this thing, huh? You and me. No offense to these guys, but they don't get it.
Actually, Sam, they do. They really do. Okay. Trust me, they've seen this kind of obsession before. Sam, we're not those kids anymore. We're not. And we got nothing to prove.
It was Sam.
So long, Nathan Drake.
Nathan!
You don't know when to give up. That's good. Don't hand it to me. I've had everything handed to me on a goddamn silver platter.
I earned this. All of it.
You want the treasure, Rafe? It's all yours.
Rafe's entire life was spent trying to earn his fortune. He had no other passion, no other desire, no friends, no family, no love, only the fortune he was certain was his. And that's what killed him in the end. Even as Nate pleads with him to help them all get out together, Rafe won't hear it. This is everything to him. Nothing else matters. That's what killed Avery. That's what killed 2. It's what killed everyone else obsessed with this treasure. And now, it might kill Sam, too.
It's no use! Try again! It's no use! Come on! Nathan! Damn it!
Listen to me. Listen to me. All I ever wanted to do was find this treasure with you.
Samuel,
We did it. We did it, brother, okay?
it's all right. There's gotta be another way.
Nathan, you gotta go.
There's gotta be some.
Gotta go!
This Thompson! There is no other way!
Come on, Nathan, I gotta know you made it out all right.
Sam was the most obsessed with finding this treasure. This was everything he ever wanted, and now, at the end, he's finally doing something for his brother's sake instead of his own. What Avery and 2 and Rafe never did. He's willing to sacrifice himself if it means the person that matters the most in the world to him gets out okay. But of course, as we know by now, Nathan Drake never accomplished anything by running away.
Nathan, the whole place is about to blow up!
That's it. That's it!
What the hell are you doing?
Stress me! God damn it! Let's get your head down! Do it now! Come on!
You are one crazy son of a bitch.
She's want to know it. Come on.
As the ship sinks and the cave roof begins to collapse, Nathan and Samuel Drake swim out together, a greater treasure than Henry Avery ever had. Nathan Drake becomes the penitent thief, because what Avery and Rafe were focused on was the fortune and the paradise that awaited them if they sought it out. But the penitent thief wasn't accepted into paradise because he sought it. It was because he saw it, right in front of him. And he repented. He changed. He gave up his thievery for something far greater.
I just kind of thought that after we found Avery's treasure, I'd be satisfied. Instead, I've kind of left with this strange feeling of
Emptiness.
yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, as thrilling as the next adventure might be, in the end, I always left with that same feeling. And sometimes you just gotta choose what you're going to keep and what you're gonna let go.
I'm afraid. I've been afraid for a long time of a lot of things. I'm afraid of financial insecurity. I'm afraid of being left behind. I'm afraid I'll never find love. I'm afraid that I'll never get to be who I want to be. And I'm afraid that as I enter this new stage in my life, I will regret not holding on to the person I used to be. I'm afraid that I'll fail. But what I've come to learn is that fear is natural, and it's real, and it's valid, and I don't think I'm the only one afraid of what comes next. It's easy to look at our passions and see something useless, something that needs some reason to care about it. If it's not making you money, or gaining you fame, or helping you to escape from the things you fear, what even is the point of being passionate about something? Neil Druckmann and Bruce Straley and Josh Scher and the entire team at Naughty Dog made this game because making games and telling stories is what they love to do. Not because they wanted to be known for it, not because they wanted to find some illusory greatness or fortune, but because it's their passion. It's what they care about. Nathan Drake had a passion for history and the people who make it, a passion for truth and those who uncover it. It was his only connection to a mother he lost, and he kept it for his entire life. But at a certain point, he lost sight of that. He started using that passion to run away from the things he feared. He started searching for fortunes that would never satisfy him, that would always leave him feeling empty in the end. But then he met someone who had that same passion for the truth, that didn't take herself that seriously, that had the same funny idea of romantic that he did. But he couldn't stop running away into these passions of his because they made more sense than whatever he had to face when he was with her. But then, when he was finally willing to commit, they both made the mistake of thinking that they had to give up their passions if they were going to have each other. And that led to a lot of things going wrong, a lot of people getting hurt, and they realized something.
I think in our attempt to lead a normal life, we may have oversteered. Look, when I was on that island, I missed the adventure. I missed us. And so now we have a chance to do what we love.
You don't have to give up what you love for who you love. You have to share it with them. That's the thing about passion. So many characters in this game lost themselves because they're convinced they can only have it one way. But you should never have to give anything up for your passion. You should never have to give anyone up for it. Because passion is something beautiful and wonderful and such a large part of everything that you are, and that's something you should share, because there's no greater joy than sharing your life with others, in whatever form that takes. I feel like I've been running away into my passions for a long time now. Hell, I think that's why I started doing this initially, because it made more sense to do this than to face the fear that I wasn't happy, or that I couldn't be who I wanted to be. So I escaped to this, to talking about the stories that I'd escaped to all my life. And escapism is all well and good. We can escape into the thrill and adventure of Uncharted all we want, because sometimes we do just need a break. But eventually, you have to recognize it for the lie it is, and turn around to face what you've been trying to run from. That's what Uncharted 4 did. The first 3 games are wonderful escapist fantasies, but Uncharted 4 forced Nathan Drake to turn around and face what he'd been trying to escape all this time. It's natural to be afraid of change, of being alone, of being left behind, of the future, and all the uncertainty it entails. And it's natural to try and find fortune in the things that make the most sense to us, to try and find it where all those questions we're afraid of aren't. But fortune can't be found. It can only be seen. Uncharted 4 is the story of Nathan Drake seeing Elena Fisher, realizing that after every adventure, he didn't walk away with nothing. He walked away with her. At the end of this game, we get an epilogue. A young girl named Cassie is roaming around a beach house looking for her parents, and she finds a key to a cabinet she isn't allowed into, and being a teenager, she looks inside anyway. And what she finds are old artifacts and trinkets and souvenirs from adventures long past. Nate and Elena walk in on their daughter, and she begs them to explain, to tell the story. And after a little bit of coaxing, they start to share it. After everything, after all the running away, all the trying to escape, all the thrill and adventure, the true beauty of Uncharted ends up being the ability to share that story with someone you love. Nate is happy. You have to choose what you're going to keep and what you're going to let go. Nate chose. He chose to let go of the life that he used to run away from the questions he feared. He chose to let go of all the superficial fortune he may have found. And he chose to keep his passion and the people he could share it with. I'm still working on me, still figuring a lot of stuff out, and I'm sure my days of running away aren't over yet, even if I know about them. But I'm trying. And I'm trying to see what's in front of me. And even if I'm only doing it here, I'm trying to share my passions and myself. I don't know if I'm happy. I think that's a more complicated question than we give it credit for. But I'm not going to run away from it. And for better or worse, I'm just going to see where that takes me.